Hello, guys, and welcome to Kaggle Days Meetup Surat. And today we have two very special guests with us, Siddha and Susanna. Siddha is an AI advisor at NASA. She is Forbes 30 under 30, and she has also recently written a book. She's an inspiration to many women coming into the field of data science. And now Susanna is an independent researcher that's also a very cool thing that I heard for the very first time. She's working for data ethics, and that is a new field that is getting explored into the field of data science. So, without any further ado, I'll be calling them both for this session. And before that, I would like to thank our community partners, Merge Intern, for helping us and organizing this meetup. So, welcome Siddha and Susanna to today's meetup. I hope you will have a fun time answering the questions to the people.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Manpreet.
I guess, yeah. I guess Siddha did not get added to the stream. Yeah. Oh, hi. Hi, both of you. How are you?
Good, good. Really excited to be here.
Yes.
So first of all, before starting, I would like both of you to introduce about your work and everything that, basically about your journey till now.
Do you want to go first, Susanna?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I come from a psychology and studio art background. So I got interested into emotion science in my senior year, and I was very much looking for an opportunity to get myself into the field of emotion science. And then there was an internship at Intel on emotion modeling on AV vehicles. So I sort of got into AI science through that route. And after that, I worked after working there and publishing a research paper there. And I had kind of moved on and wanted to do my own research on emotion and memory. I feel like there is a connection between the two that is kind of overlooked in AI science. And if you can find and connect the dots, that it could be one of the major breakthroughs in emotion modeling and behavior modeling. So I'm kind of working on that on my own. I like doing my own thing, but in between I take contracts and work for other companies. My last contract was with Amazon with the Alexa speech team. Uh, Apart from that, my after working at Intel and Amazon and going deeper into the AI science field, I have come to see that there is a lack of ethics in AI. So I think my focus has now been on that, and that's how I got into research in AI ethics. And now I feel like I should focus more on that and also see what I can do for the community. And recently, I started volunteering for Data Ethics for All, and I know Manpreet was one of the boot camp instructors for there. So that's pretty much my journey so far.
It's really
How
exciting.
about
Data
you,
ethics.
Siddha?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, data ethics is such an up and coming field, and myself, I'm always trying to make sure that whatever work I'm doing, um, are we checking the right kind of biases? Are we releasing the model, all the code to make everything reproducible, and like the data sheet for data sets and the model sheets, are we releasing all that with all the work that we're doing? So it's a really interesting field, and there's so much work going on, and it's really inspiring to see all the work that you've done in this field, because we do need pioneers such as yourself in the field, guiding everybody else and just leading the way. So it's really nice to be here with you today. So I work on Nvidia's self-driving team, and uh, I mostly work on making sure that the training that we do on a large scale, so this is training of neural networks that we do on a large scale, is stable and scalable. And at the same time, we also have to check that, okay, all the things that we're training, all the neural networks that we're training, are they as reproducible, and how do we add checks and tests in place to make sure that it's going to work similarly in the real world. So of course, the best way to test, especially a vehicle, is to take it out on the road. But as you can imagine, driving on the road is very safe, because at the end of the day, you do have people in the car. So that's why there is a hardware known as Nvidia Drive Constellation, where you can simulate millions and millions of miles, and there you can put in as many edge cases as you want to make sure that the car and the neural networks within the car are really behaving correctly and as expected. So it adds another level of check to the code that we've been writing. And apart from that, as Manpreet mentioned, I also volunteer as an advisor to some of the projects in NASA's AI accelerator, which is known as Frontier Development Lab. And so there, we really work on projects that that figure out, how are solar storms affected, or how do storm affect, the electricity grid that we have on the Earth, or how do we automate a meteor detection pipeline. So I get to be the part of really amazing projects going on within NASA, and how do we use AI to enhance some of their workflow. So keeps me really on my toes, and always learning all these new things from the domain side. So it's really exciting to be part of that as well.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
So,
thank you.
when we were child, we used to dream that NASA will go to NASA. So, how do you think now that dream come true? You're working there. Like, like as a child, we always used to idolize. I'll go to NASA, be an astronaut or something. But then, how do you
Yeah.
idolize that at now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think as a child, we are introduced to so many different fields, right? I remember once we had a class on geology, and I think we were taken on like a field trip to collect different kinds of rocks and identify different kinds of rocks. And, by the end of the day, I wanted to be a geologist, right? And then similarly, I think we had a class on cartography where we studied maps and contours and everything, and by the end of the day, I wanted to be a cartographer. So I think most children, including myself, we are easily influenced, and we learn a lot. There's this huge amount of knowledge that we have as we are kids, but then as we slowly grow up, it's we usually tend to look at some fields that interest us more. And I think for me, I developed an interest in computer science back in my school. We had some really nice programming classes and computer classes, and I think I really latched onto that. And then when I started my bachelor's, I went through all these different fields in computer science, networking, databases, application development, and so on. And I really latched on to AI over there. And fortunately for me, that was the time when Coursera came and MOOCs came out. So, there's this really famous Andrew Ng's course on machine learning. And I think, like most people, I also took it, and that was my first foray into machine learning and AI. And fortunately for me, I liked it. And, it was back then, I think it was 2012. So there wasn't a lot of material out there that was available, but I was interested in applications of AI, and that eventually I think brought me to the workflows or the applications that we have ongoing within the Frontier Development Lab, which is the AI accelerator. And there I get an opportunity to really figure out how can AI enhance something, an already existing workflow. So yeah, it's really nice.
Okay, so without anything, we'll start our Ask Me Anything session. So, the first question that I want to ask you is now, as we were talking about the childhood, and if you see now, there are many coding sites are coming for the children, like to age of 10 and 12, to teach them machine learning and AI and stuff now. So, what are your views on that? Like, is it really good for them to learn at this age and explore and this stuff? or this the childish innocence that they have is getting vanished or something. So what are your views on that, both of you?
So it's a really interesting question. I'm not at that stage where I know someone who's 10 years old and has all these options to figure out, but I don't know if teaching coding or teaching computer science is actually replacing something else, or is it just something added on to their curriculum? And at that point in time, it does make a difference. I think as kids, imagination and playfulness, I think, are some of the really important things that we develop, and that itself helps in creativity, which I think in research is really really important, because if you can think of a creative solution, you can build a creative solution.
Yes, I think I agree with Siddha on that. You should not. It can be an add-on if you have like time for that, and not like pressure them with too many add-ons. But if they have time for a little bit of add-on there, let them explore. But I don't agree with all this coding and computer science classes. I see as young as 5 years old are now asked, and then they have one for toddlers, and I'm like, okay, where are we going with this?
Wow.
It's not. I don't see that that's going to be very helpful, because AI science, as you can see, is a very creative field. It's a very innovative field, and if you don't develop the imagination and the creativity skills, you're not going to do very well with the craftsmanship. I feel like that's the craftsmanship. It's like giving you the coding skills is just craftsmanship. It's not the actual art or the creative side of it. So you can always learn how to use a tool later on, but it's the imagination that comes first.
It's beautifully put,
Yeah.
Susanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think like I don't know, but however I have much interacted on LinkedIn, it's the parents who are forcing their kids to get into the coding and AI and learn to code and stuff. And this, like, I got 2 or 3 requests, like, please mentor my 11-year old kid to AI and help him with this. So I think I don't know how is this competitive world getting more competitive, and they'll learn more faster than us, and then we'll be like, no. Okay, so the second question for you comes on the screen is like, how does a beginner choose projects for making her profile after doing courses on Coursera? The projects done through them, do they add any value, or how should they, like, if you did a course on Coursera, so how we make our projects and how do we use that learnings that we learned from a particular course?
So, if I'm speaking about just my experience, I've been on both sides. I've been, the student or the graduate who gives the interview, and I've also been on the other side as someone who interviews candidates for a potential position. And one thing that I've learned throughout this process is when candidates, showcase their profile, which means that they have a bunch of projects that they can talk about. And these projects are similar to actually the ones on Coursera, but they need to be detailed. So it needs to be, you put in some thought about the data loading process, for example, or the data processing step, and then training step, and then so on. So I think if a candidate can show that they've put in enough thought in all these places, I think that really adds. And of course, you know putting up projects on GitHub or writing blogs on Medium, I think all that adds to the portfolio of all students. And I really encourage that, because it helps get the word out, and it's really another way of showcasing your project. So yeah, definitely putting your projects out on any publicly accessible websites, and having an end-to-end approach on any projects that you work on.
I think I will just turn the tables on Manpreet here, and just say, like, follow her example. Look at how
Yeah.
she's doing things on her own, and that's what's more important. Like, you you don't have to wait for a job to put, projects on your profile. You can
Yeah.
write, you can lead organizations like this, you can build communities on YouTube. When you
Yes.
put that on your profile, that speaks volumes more than just working for a company. And if you don't have an example on how to do that, just follow Manpreet and do what she does. And you will be able to, get your hands on that.
Thank you. I think the COVID situation, I took it in the right way because initially everyone was depressed. Even I was, but then I started to interact with people on LinkedIn, and they said you should use this time to build your profile, learn your skills. And I was in my final year of college. We had just one exam to go, so I think that made me that worked in my favor or something. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question that I have for you is how to choose projects to make your GitHub profile, and how important is to make yourself as a brand in the data science community.
Do you want to take a stab at that, Susanna?
I mean, like, I have to be very careful here. I don't want human beings to brand themselves as anything, but I understand what that means to brand yourself in the DS community. Like, create a name for yourself and a profile that stands out and speaks about you. I see that's what they mean by it, but I would say choose the projects that really speak to your heart, that you feel really passionate about. Don't worry about whether it's a project that's the hot thing right now. Don't care about that. Just go with whatever is speaking to your heart, because then only you can put all this time into it and put that as, as your brand. And also be careful that, when you are branding a human being, we are evolutionary in our process. We change. We are not like Nike or, any of the other brands out there that like always has the same logo and same symbol. We change, we evolve. So remember that your narrative throughout your life will continue to change. So don't feel bad about, getting stuck to one thing. If you feel like you have a passion now, new direction in life, just go with it. That's what I would advise. But I will let Sindhu also give her on this.
Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure. Like, um, building a brand out of yourself in data science, right? If you represent a company, or you're a part of a startup that is the actual company, right? Then, of course, like you would need to brand yourself. And let's say you have an easy to use framework, something like that. But I'm not sure exactly how individuals brand themselves, because I mean, everybody in data science is good at data science or is improving in data science, right? So I'm a little confused as to what exactly um, the brand here is, because like everybody's
So
profile. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll clear it that by brand, as in to make your identity yourself in LinkedIn, like your presence, so that people know you and know by name. Okay, today some content going to come by XYZ, and it's
Mhm.
related to data visualization, or suppose deep learning or machine learning. So I meant
Mhm.
in that way, like for
Okay.
even a student, because when we start our journey on LinkedIn, we are a student at a college, and we how do we make our presence felt and get connections to people, because it's very difficult, like people accepting our requests or something and we talking to them, because we as a students have not a very good profile, and that I have even faced, like people don't accept requests on LinkedIn or something like that. So people get like frustrated at times. Okay, what should I do? And maybe they get jealous even. Okay, he's getting recognized, what should I do to get this presence or something? And it's a very normal human tendency to feel that, being a very beginner in this field or anything, I guess. So I meant in that way to ask.
So there are actually a couple of questions in this one question, right? If we're talking about portraying yourself on LinkedIn, right? There are a bunch of search engine optimization things that come into place there. Then if it's about, getting that request accepted, it's usually nice if you have a message that you send to the other person so that they can connect to, okay, this is the reason why this person is reaching out. Because if you just send an empty request, I mean, people get multiple requests a day. They cannot actually go and look at everybody's profile. I mean, that's just not feasible. So, if there is an ask that you have, if you want mentorship on a particular project, or if you want to ask for a review on an article that you wrote, so I think it's really helpful to put that ask front and center. And then when it comes to like publishing content, in AI and in data science, there's so much depth in every field, right? In visualization, right? There's so many ways to visualize things, right? I don't know if anybody can actually build a brand solely around visualization, right? Because you can't just do visualization, you have to do everything else as well. So I think, as I mentioned before, I think just repeating that whatever you put out there on LinkedIn or GitHub or any blog post site, if you focus on the end-to-end pipeline of the project, that really shows an engineering mindset, and I think that really appeals to whoever is going to be visiting the website. And yeah, I'll always put emphasis on this because I think that is actually really really helpful. And of course, you can't do 10 projects a day and, put everything out there. So you have to be very selective in where you put your time. And like Susanna mentioned, I'd like to reiterate that, you have, a passion for something. Let's say it's detecting recyclable waste versus non-recyclable waste, right? There are so many projects around that. So if that is something that you're really interested in, you can highlight those passion projects through your online profiles. I hope that helped.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question is like, is blogging very underrated in the field of data science, and how important is to do blogging and writing out your thoughts and sharing? Because what I felt in my college was people don't share things because they feel that other person would do much more better than them. So it's like they'll not tell anything and do it silently or something. So how do you think that community thing and shared learning is it important? I guess it's important for every field, but how in data science?
Uh, I would say I think blogging is never underrated. That's my opinion. Whatever knowledge you have, even if you think others have already written volumes on it, your perspective matters. What you are going to write is the only unique thing that is out there that nobody else can write about. So always, blogging is never underrated in any field. I especially whenever people say data science, I see it in the form of like data. Let's just say take it as data. Data is like big data is like too big for us to even volumize, categorize. So you can pick any part of it and start writing. You can write about the data that's being collected by reviews that's being collected when you go to a restaurant. You can pick any topic and write about it, and that actually helps you get a foothold in the industry as well. That puts a mark on everything that you do. So I would say it's never underrated. And that's where I saw you write your blog on Medium. It was quite impressive, and it showed I didn't get that perspective of somebody just graduating in the middle of a pandemic. I never had that perspective. Only you wrote about that, and then I got to know about it. I would not know. So if everybody who graduated in the middle of a pandemic decided I don't have to write, nobody will know what that story is. So it's important to write, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that's a really nice perspective. And when I was back in my bachelor days, I had this GitHub pages that I used to publish based on whatever I was reading. And I considered it as a way of, an additional way of making sure that I'm actually understanding what I'm doing.
Mm.
Because I mean, you must have heard, there are so many sayings that when you teach someone, you actually learn a lot more about the subject. And so I really treated it like that. And I used to be really excited every time I used to publish a new GitHub page, thinking that, oh wow, this will go viral and everything. But I used to have like minimal views on it, maybe zero or one view at the end of a couple of weeks. But that that is how you grow and how you learn. And another thing that I want to mention is, you know let's take the example of the Distill blog on LSTMs, right? There were so many papers, so many blogs on how LSTMs work. But when that Distill publication came out with like those amazing visualizations, right, it made a mark. And the reason was because it offered a fresh perspective, and the way they showed it, really made a lot of intuitive sense. And so, really just piggybacking off what Susanna said, even if you're writing something that already exists out there, it's still a fresh perspective and you're going to add something to it. So you should always feel motivated to write it. And don't always think that, okay, somebody's going to be reading it, because somebody may read it like years down the line, right? Because I mean, you can imagine, like, if thousands of people are writing about the same thing, only maybe one or two will actually be read. But when you consider the perspective that, okay, let me add 10 years to this line, or to this scenario, then of course the number of hits can increase. So um, and also, it's the question of, if you actually like writing about your work, or if you like blogging, then you should really consider taking it up. But if you don't like it and you feel like it's a huge burden, then you can of course concentrate on other avenues that in data science you feel interested and motivated to do.
Yes, definitely. I
Okay,
mean,
thanks. Yeah, so like as you said, you started to write with GitHub pages and you recently wrote a book. So, how was that journey from that GitHub pages to a book?
Yeah.
Would you like to
That's,
share with us?
yeah, that's a really nice title, from GitHub pages to O'Reilly pages. So, the book really came out of a lot of experiences that I had. And I used to go to a lot of conferences to talk about my work. And my co-authors really share the same experience as well. And so when we would go to these conferences, we would get a lot of students, mostly graduates, people about to graduate, or software engineers, in the software engineering industry, right? Not in necessarily AI or data science industry. And they would all always be asking the question, how do I get started in AI? I've done those MNIST examples, right? What's next? What's next? And when we
Yeah.
dive deep into this question, it really seems that, okay, I've begun my journey in AI and I like it. But then how do I go from being a beginner to like a practitioner, or, an industry veteran who actually knows, what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and so on. So that's really the motivation behind the book. And so the book is, really a conversation around, let's say you have an idea, right? Um, and all of those ideas in the book are stuff that already exists out there. For example, building a reverse image search engine, right? It's not something new. It's been there for so many years. So many companies are working on it, right? They iterate on one particular part of the pipeline. They add some improvement to something, but the thing is that, these ideas and these examples are actually pretty common in a lot of the companies, right? If you look at a reverse image search engine, right? Google has it, Wayfair, Pinterest, IKEA, any clothing website, right? Like Mintra, and so many others, they use the same concept, right? So let's say you were interviewing at these places, right? If you were to be asked a question on how do you develop a reverse image search engine, you would absolutely nail it, because you would know, okay, how do we collect the data, right? If there is data that is coming in incrementally, how would you train the model then? Would you be retraining on the go, or would you retrain in shorter supplements, whenever you have a good amount of data collected? So it's really, how do you think through the entire process? How do you think through, the deployment stage? How do you go from a higher precision to a lower precision standpoint? What acceleration do you get in that stage? Um, how do you increase the representative power of the embeddings? So it's really how you actually think through the entire pipeline. And again, this is something very doable. There are a bunch of data sets out there that you can use, to experiment this with. And that's really what we're doing in the book, right? It's a question of, like, if you have 10 images, you would do it like this. If you have a million images, you would do it like this. If you have a billion images, this is what you would do, right? So it's really developing that learning skill that, of course, I learned, my co-authors learned, and it's not like we just learned it in an instant, right? We spent years on just a single part of this problem, learning it, learning it from other veterans already in the field, and failing and learning again. So it's really, 20 years worth of knowledge and effort in a single book, if I may say so.
Wow.
Uh, um, so, yeah, continue, Susanna.
No, I meant that's really amazing. I haven't read your book, but I really want to read it now. Like, I want to
Thank
see
you.
how you
Thank
have,
you.
articulated
Yeah.
all of that. That would be great.
As you said, you get to ask by people what I'm a beginner, how do I start in the field of data science? So, as you know, now there are many courses coming, and people saying learn data science in 10 days, get a job at Microsoft, Amazon, and there's a lot of pool of resources and stuff out there on net. But I, being a beginner, how do I choose that this is really gonna be very effective and this is not gonna be effective? Because there's a lot of money, business, and less of knowledge also at least you can, if you can code that. So how does a beginner choose that I should be following such type of content or books or read these courses or stuff? As I said, you that there are people on net telling, okay, learn data science in 10 days and be a data scientist. So what are your thoughts and calls on this?
I don't think I learned data science in 10 days, and it's such an evolving field that, there are still aspects of it that I am still learning. And so I think the conference results for NeurIPS was announced today, and there was this really nice paper. So I didn't read the actual paper, but I read its Twitter thread where they describe the paper. And the paper is really about how transfer learning works, right? Now, transfer learning is a really old concept, right? But understanding how it's actually working, how are the weights in a network changing, right? That's a fresh perspective on it. And even though people have been working on it for years and years and years, there's still something new in it. There's still a lot of unknown in it. So I think having an open mind that, even if you spend years and years and years in the field, there will still be something that you have to learn, and you just have to be okay with, not knowing everything, and being open to the possibility of a new learning experience. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Yeah, I don't think you can learn anything in 10 days, but you can get your foothold in anything in 10 days, or if you are like really dedicated, you can get an entry point into it. But just to think that you can learn in something in 10 days and then get a job at Microsoft or Google is that's kind of unrealistic. And no matter how good the training is, it's an ocean, like you're jumping into different oceans here, and you will not be able to gain that much knowledge about that field within that time frame. But it's a good way to jump in and see what you can
Yeah,
learn in 10 days.
it's interesting, right? Because I think whenever we try to do something new, 10 days is a really good time, because when you hear, okay, I can learn this in 10 days, I'm going to really do it now. At least you have the motivation for an extended period of time.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
think
Yeah,
that's good motivation. That's a good starting
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
yeah. So the next question that I have is, should I consider doing master specializations in data science to get higher chances of employability? I don't know about US how that works, but in India, it's still that if you're from a BTech and a computer science or electrical, your chances to get a job is much more than being in sciences like BSc or MSc or MCA. It's still that criteria, at least in India. And I don't
Hmm.
know, but like startups do see your profile and works, and then not your degree. So what do you then? People feel like, no, I'll go to US or outside India, abroad, and do a MS in data science or computer science, and then I'll get a job or something. So what are your both thoughts on it?
I I don't think I can speak for India because I don't know how the job market is over there, and if that is true, I believe like there is this classism and this intellectual elitism over there in all parts of the world where a degree kind of makes you the best educated. But I I am from the I live here. I may give an opinion that may not apply to the population over there, but I think you don't need to have higher education in just to get a better chance at employability. If you can prove through your projects, through your own independent studies and independent initiatives, you will get employed. That's not a big issue here. I would not know that holds true for India, but I hope it does.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Susanna because, like, in my workplace, especially at Nvidia, we have people like coming in from diverse streams, right? So there is someone who's, worked in atomic physics for years and years and years, or chemistry for years and years and years. And the good thing is that there is data in all these fields, right? And it's not like data science is really new because, right, everywhere people were using statistics, right? And so people have been using that for a long, long time. And it really boils down to the same thing. If you can show that you can do the job, you will get the job. And I really hope that it doesn't boil down to if you have a degree in it. um, yeah, I really hope that it doesn't boil down to a matter of degree. But at the same time, there are so many degrees. Like Fast AI has, I think it offers like a certificate degree. Coursera definitely has like those certificates that you can show. So there are definitely a lot of options as well out there that you can certify that you have knowledge apart from obviously the working portfolio projects.
Yeah, there's a lot of nano degrees that you can take
Yes,
online
yes,
and
yeah,
actually kind of put it on your profile. And as Sindhu says, it's the transferability of skills and the transferability of talents. I mean, I am from psychology, where like the research methodology, randomized trials, sampling, everything is the same. Like if you
yeah.
go to any other field, you can transfer some of those skills, some of the things that you have learned. But then there are like other areas where you may have to bridge yourself a little bit. But I think I hope it's not true that everybody is being asked to have a PhD, and you know it's not possible in this economy and in the time
Yeah.
we live in. It's a burden on people to have a loan and to go to studies, and yeah, I hope not. It's
So the next question I feel to ask is that if people want to go for research field, is it very compulsory to opt for PhD? And if not PhD, then how do they contribute and be a part of R&D department in the industry sector, and like contribute to the projects and be a part of it?
So I think it really boils down to the same thing, right? If you can show that you've done some research in the past, in schools, and research isn't really like you have to sit in a room you need to do all this stuff. It's not like, how we see on TV. It's like people like you and I do it, right? And a lot of the time it just involves working with data, especially in data science, right? Or even AI. So there are so many data sets out there available, right? Everybody has access to it, especially if you have a college email, right? It makes it even more easier. So really just getting down to it, working on that data set, just trying to figure things out in the data set. I think that really helps. And that already shows that you have a research bent of mind and asking questions, why are we doing this? What is this really going to help with? That really helps, develop a research mindset and asking questions, right? All those are really, really important.
Yes, definitely. You can take any public data set and just write a paper on it, on your own,
Yeah,
find out all the interesting things you found in that data set. Just write about it. That's research in a
yeah,
nutshell. Like, yeah,
yeah,
so that you
yeah.
that you had this initiative and that you found all these interesting things within this data set. That's research.
Yeah.
Just those are the kind of things that we have to do. I, a PhD is good. I'm happy for all the people who got to have one, but not everybody has that, and you can still go into research without
Yeah.
that.
And I also
Okay,
wanted to
so
mention
like,
just one
oh
more thing,
yeah,
Manpreet. So Susanna said
yeah,
that you can publish like in a research setting, like in most fields have like this website known as archive where you can publish
yeah,
things, and there is really no bar to it, right? There is no peer reviewing there, so whatever work you have, you can directly put it out there, and it again adds to your experience and how you go through the learning process. So again, I think everything that you do really adds up to wherever job, whichever job you're working with on, or whatever task you're really doing.
okay. So like in software engineering fields, there are many open source communities like Anita Borg, GSOC, and much more. Is there something into the field of data science? And if yes, how can one be a part of it and contribute to the same?
So I can take a stab at this first.
Yeah.
So in data science and in AI, a lot of the frameworks that are being built, right, those are primarily community driven, right? Be it TensorFlow, PyTorch, Rapids, um, all of them are community driven, and all of them are open source. So you should always feel free to just look it up, work on them, and really just push all the changes you have or all the improvements you have, after obviously proper reviewing. And if I can remember correctly, in TensorBoard, there is this new feature that came out last year that was actually a result of community effort. So, someone just like us, he was working on, let me try to do this, let me try to do that, let me visualize this differently. And he just worked with the TensorFlow team, pushed his changes to GitHub, and I think it's the What If tool or something. And it's out there now, right? It's anybody who uses TensorBoard and TensorFlow can use the tool, and it's just another example of how awesome really open source is, right? Because anybody can work on it. And again, there's really no bar to it, right? Nobody's gonna ask you, okay, show me your degree, only then you can access the GitHub, right? And it's really amazing, how open all these communities are, and it's really easy to ask questions and get answers. So I think it's really, really, really open communities and always welcoming everybody. And if I remember correctly, so all the organizations you mentioned, like Anita Borg, Google, even Google Summer of Code and all that, right? They have specific work on like small data science projects, even Mozilla Science Lab. right? And then there's another Alan Turing Institute that has a lot of projects in open source specifically for data science, and in fact, specifically for ethics and bias in AI, right? And then, of course, there's the AI Now Institute. Um, yeah, and a lot of open source work out there.
I think she covered pretty much everything that I was gonna say. AI, including AI now, partnership for AI. There's like so many. Just have to
Yeah.
Google that you can find so many open sources to work on, and Sidhu covered everything, so I don't have much to add to that.
So, like, I'll ask you the next question is how important it is to be stay focused and consistent in the field of data science, because I think data science as a field is evolving every day. This new paper, new research coming, and how important is to learn, research, and practice in the field of data science, or some like everything. I guess you need to be consistent for it. I would love to know more about data science.
Susanna, do you want to take a stab at it
Yeah,
before
sure.
I go rambling?
I'm going to do the same. Like I would say, I'm I'm not sure I want to be so conservative to say like be consistent, because this is an evolving field. There's so much you can explore and learn, and I would not get stuck in being consistent. I don't put that as a criteria, and that's sort of like get stuck in a rut. But be consistent in how you are pursuing that pathway. Like always be consistent in going towards it. That's where your consistency has to come from, and I will just give it back to Sidhu.
So, I think consistency isn't unique to any field in computer science. I think, if you're in the medical field, right, if you're a cardiologist or a gynecologist, it's not like you finish your degree and you're done, right? You always have to keep on studying. There are always new things coming up. Same if you work in the space sciences, right? There's always something new out there. And I think it's the same in data science. There's always something new out there because I don't think there's ever going to be any saturation, okay, that this field is solved. There's nothing else that can be done there. There's always new ideas, creativity, new insights that can be used to improve it. And at the same time, if you're really interested and motivated, keep up with all the new research, right? I feel like you will find time to do it. But at the same time, just think about, there's so much research in AI and data science. It's not possible to keep up with absolutely everything, right? So, what I usually try to do is I read blogs that are written by, just the general population, because like they're putting in 10 hours worth of their time to condense everything into a 10-minute read. And I'm just crowdsourcing all that knowledge from everybody. And then same as that, there are so many newsletters, right? Twimmel AI or This Week in Machine Learning and AI has a podcast as well as a newsletter. Then there's Deep Learning AI. Then there's the batch. Um, I'm probably forgetting so many, but there are so many newsletters, blogs, and podcasts that really, summarize everything that's going on. So rather than, spending hundreds of hours learning everything and looking at everything that's going on, it's really easy to crowdsource and all that knowledge and just, read it on the go or whenever, you're not doing anything focused.
Yes, and also try to follow people who are in the field. Just follow them on LinkedIn, follow their feeds. They may be posting the content that you want to read, so it's like it's a good way to stay consistent in learning. I think the
Yeah.
only thing you have to stay consistent is learning and being
Yeah.
right on top of everything. But
Yeah.
don't AI and data science is like a huge field, so you don't want to subscribe to multiple blogs and multiple news feeds and get overwhelmed. But know what your niche is and then just focus on it and follow the people that you think are leaders in their space, and they will be actually be posting the right content. You don't even have to go look for it, and you can read. And as Sidhu says, blogs are a good way to start anything. It's curated content, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
the best one out there.
But as a psychologist, I think you may have a really nice viewpoint on this, because at that, like at some point, it actually stops becoming, you know, LinkedIn and everything really do come under the realm of social media. So there has to be a time when we stop, looking at social media and actually, just taking our mind off of it. So, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how should we really curate it and really time ourselves, um, to be alive for the rest of the day as well as, be focused.
Yeah, what I usually do is I have the click save button. If I see like an article or something that somebody has posted that I want to read, I click save it, and then I set aside a time for it to go and read. I don't jump in and immediately read everything. Then I will be on LinkedIn all the time. And that's going to consume my time, right? And
Mm,
as she says, it's very right. We are too much addicted to social media, and LinkedIn is also another social media.
mm,
And I don't
mm.
think that is a good way to consume content. So, save things, that's one way. And another one I would say is like more, we have in cognitive science, we have come to the conclusion that reading articles and blogs continuously, I just told you that to read articles and blogs, I'm not contradicting myself, but then to have that as your source of knowledge is not a good way to crystallize knowledge. So books are the best way to crystallize knowledge, where you are engaging with one person's argument for 10 days or 5 days, and you're focusing on, it's like having a one-on-one conversation with Sidhu. And
Yeah.
if I'm reading her book, it's her argument that I'm focusing on, and that is a good way to crystallize knowledge than to actually read more blogs all the time. But yes, blogs are a great way to read, but make sure you set aside a time for it. Save things and set aside a time for it.
Um, as you know that in the field of software engineering, we need to know competitive coding. So when applying for jobs into the field of data science, companies like Microsoft, Google still go for competitive coding. So what are your suggestions as a beginner? How would one focus on building this and this and this and everything when applying for jobs as a fresh graduate?
I will let Sidhu take this now.
So I think there is like a much needed reform that's happening, especially when hiring for AI and data science come into the picture. And I think Professor Devi, she had a lot of work around this. How do we actually build the right interview structure for someone who's looking at data science and AI roles? And there's a lot of good information around that, and I think a lot of companies have started to look at that. So that's a really big plus point. And at the same time, I think the idea of competitive coding is to make sure that you're fluent with, coding. And when we look at, engineering in AI, or let's say building a large scale infrastructure, right? You will be using some basic, engineering skills in it. And oftentimes that's usually what the questions are tailored to. So bringing the really old example again, a reverse image search engine, right? That can actually be an interview question, right? How would you make the pipeline? And of course this is too big a question to actually try to code for, but just having breaking this pipeline into different subsections and really looking at what are the most important questions in this particular section, similar to what we talked about before. As an example, how do you make the embeddings more representative, right? How do you go from 10 images to a billion images, right? Those are exactly the kind of questions that interviewers will be looking at. because to an interviewer it shows that okay, you're already thinking about all the right things. And again, everything I think just revolves around the same thing, right? Whatever task, whatever project you have at hand, really think through absolutely everything in it. And again, that's often what is in interviews, especially in the AI and data science field. And lot of reforms coming. As I mentioned, Professor Devi works a lot in this area. So a lot of reforms coming in this area.
Um, I would just add to that, like, I don't do competitive coding. So that's that's not my area. I'm not a data scientist per se. I come from the background of psychology and then I moved into AI science. So I can give you some hope that if you don't know competitive coding, you can still work in technology sector. You can still be as competitive as anybody else out there. There is a way for you to do that if you just understand the logic behind the coding. If you understand how the engineer has set this up and how this works, you will do fine. That's all they want you to know. And you can do a little bit of Python coding and learn things on your own, but it's not a prerequisite in my opinion. But I agree with this answer. It's always about knowing the process. If you understand the process, that's always a good thing. That will help you a long way.
Thank you. It was like such a good insight to that question, because as a beginner, when companies come for hiring on campus, people have this. I want to go for data science. Why should I sit for this SD roles or something? Especially in India, I don't know about how things work abroad. That's what's happened in my college generally. Like the first day is all about computer students getting placed, and then the coming days, all the other branches getting placed. Last question for the day. I mean, second last question. Like the field of data science is very vast. You have NLP, you have computer vision, you have data visualization. Now you have AI evangelist, data engineer. Such a big field. So, you might get asked by people, how should I start with NLP? How should I start with computer vision? Do you feel like machine learning or the basics and mathematics should be focused and then move ahead to deep learning, or how do you suggest to people when you get answer questioned about these questions from the people?
I think basics and having a good foundation is necessary. Like trees have a great foundation, right? And they stand tall and strong no matter what happens. And it's the same with, any science really. If you have the basics, anything that's new is just, remixing the basics that you have. And of course, knowing the basics, if you're talking about probability, right? If you don't know some simple rules in probability, and you want to work in like Bayesian, the Bayesian side of AI, right? It's not really going to work out because you need that background to really work in, right? And I mean, but at the same time, you do have to, know how to practically use that, theory that you have. Um, and that's really where the projects come into play, right? For example, again, the reverse image search engine example, right? How do you scale it, right? What's the difference between horizontal scaling and vertical scaling? Which one would you prefer when, setting up this infrastructure? So again, it's not just that, it's totally AI. And if you build a product, it's never going to be that, okay, this is just the AI bit and there's nothing else that we're doing, right? That has to be served to the customer using some kind of visual method, right? And it has to be deployed using some infrastructure. So it's always going to be more than AI that you have to understand and learn. And again, that builds back to, all of that involves programming and knowing aspects of computer science, right? How does software development work? Knowing the waterfall model as an example, right? So it's not standalone AI. There's always going to be, a whole plethora of things that you will need to know. And but you don't, of course, need to, know everything about it. You can know it in bits and pieces. And of course, when you work in a team, there are always going to be other people who can help you and others can pitch in. So it's really a well-rounded effort for any task or any project that you work on.
Yes, I would just add to that, like what she has said, is know your basics. It's always a remixing of everything. It's the one concept that people forget. It's not like somebody has invented something new in the last 100 years. We are
Yeah,
just improvising on everything that somebody invented long
yeah,
ago, and we are
yeah.
still working on it. You just have to go back and find something that somebody did long ago, and if you can even understand that concept and really mug it down and know that it's by heart, like in the middle of the night if somebody wakes you up and go. You have now the concept in your head, and that's always a remixing of concepts. That's what happens
Yeah,
in every science, I feel. And
yeah,
that's something that people don't tell you. That's the truth.
yeah. I think even it's not just sciences, right? Cooking has been like this, right, for so many years, right? We have the same set of spices, same utensils, right? The same way of, induction, how the heat is the vegetables get the heat, as an example, right? It's not changed, but yeah, there are so many different cuisines. You slowly cook something, you cook it immediately, right? There are so many, remixes that you can do to it. So yeah, but the basics are still the same, right? Salt, sugar, and so many other things.
Yeah, same with music, same with art. It's
Yeah.
always the same thing.
Okay, so the last question for you before we end the session is, like, as you said, you both have been working in the field for now many years. And so, if you get the chance to time travel back and correct like three things about your journey, if you get a thing like, okay, I would correct these three things, what would that be? It's just a fun question before we end our session. So, yeah.
Hmm. I would I would say I would have asked more questions as soon as I started. That's an area I feel like I didn't do. I didn't ask enough questions. I would have asked more questions. I would have been more involved than just assuming, okay, this is what they want me to do. I'm just going to do it. Instead of that, I could have asked more questions. Another thing I would say is like, I think being bold enough to take on new projects on your own and to not feel like I don't have the confidence to do that. That if I had started that earlier, that would have been great. And the last, I don't know, I can't think of it. But yeah, let's Sidhu continue and maybe it will come to me.
I think I'll take a slightly different approach because life is really interesting. There's no holdout set or there's no test set, right? There's no parallel universe in which we can test things out and say, okay, this works. It's minimum effort. Let's try this out, right? So, like, if you take something out of what you've done or you add something, there's no way to know if it works out, right? If you actually, do something or you don't do something. So, I think that all the experiences that I've had, I've definitely learned something from them. And if I'm learning something, I really don't want to not learn it. So I wouldn't really remove any experience, or any learning opportunity that I've had. And I don't know if this is a very cliche answer, but I strongly believe that, everything that we do, there's some learning opportunity in it. Um, and it doesn't have to be like, you're learning machine learning or something, right? It's something very basic. you know Something very basic is also stuff that you can learn, and I think everything really counts. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what you did in that project or what you did this project. It's really about how your life's journey was. and what was the impact that you had on the lives of others. So if we view it as sort of holistic, we understand that I may not know everything today, and I'm not going to know everything tomorrow also, but I will know 1% of something new, that I think is good enough for me. I don't necessarily need to be a genius at anything.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think, yeah. It's not possible for us to go back and change things, but only thing is like we can learn from the past and say, this is something I regretted. Now I'm going to make sure that I don't have that regret anymore. And I do agree with her, like you are always going to be learning something new
Yeah.
all throughout your life, and you cannot go back and judge yourself on the things you missed. Then you're going to be full of regrets your whole life. So that's not a way to go. And have a lot of unsupervised learning, as in
Yeah. Yeah.
more more than supervised learning, more than reinforced learning. Have a lot of unsupervised learning.
Yeah.
Put things together on your own without any guidance from anybody, and that's the best kind of learning.
Yeah. I think
So
it's also just one thing, Manpreet. Sorry, I'm interjecting you so much. One thing I do want to mention is that when we see people online, or when we see profile of other people or their CVs, right? We only see the positives, right? We don't see the negatives. We don't see the failures, and we also don't see the time and effort that they put into doing anything, right? And whenever we see something, I think we should take some time to reflect that, okay, in order to attain goal X, we need to put this much amount of time to actually get there, right? And I don't know if that's going to happen in 10 days. It didn't happen for me, but it takes a lot of patience, a lot of failures, and eventual overnight successes, right? To get to wherever you are today.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, always I do say that, on social media and everywhere, we are only presenting the positive side. We are only putting the pictures of the birthday party. We
Yeah.
don't put the after effects of all the dishes and everything that is out there that you have to clean up. We
Yeah.
don't put the before pictures where you are like stressing out and trying to get everything ready. So
Yeah.
it's not a complete data set that we are offering to people.
Yeah.
So we have to offer the complete data set. We have to ask people for the complete data set of their experiences.
Yeah.
it was so fun talking to you both and learning so much from it. And I hope the viewers also liked all their questions getting answered from two very pretty women and wonderful women out there into the field of data science. And thank you for joining me and spending your lovely time for the community. And I hope you all had a great session until we meet next Sunday with another meetup with some other people. Until we meet next time.
Thank you, Manpreet.
So much. Thank you so much for having us. It was a really nice experience.
Yes, thank you so much, Manpreet. You are really